What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Thanks for watching. We have a little bit of a news story for you guys today, and I would say this is kind of a big deal. Honestly, when I first heard about this, I didn't think much of it, and then within the last 24 hours, I would say I've gotten 10 to 12 text messages from friends and fellow YouTubers and stuff like that who are basically panic buying Gen 4 and Gen 5 Glocks. So that kind of, put it into perspective how big of a deal this is to some people. I'm sure you've probably heard, if you haven't, recently some news hit the internet that as of November 30th, Glock will be discontinuing all non-compact pistols. This excludes the baby Glocks like the 42, 43, 43X. I believe the 48 is not on this list either, so those will remain the same. But all other pistols will no longer be available in their current configuration, such as my Gen 5 Glock 19, one of my favorite pistols that I own. So it's all rumors and speculation. There have been some people that have spoken to insiders at Glock and people close to the company, and from what I hear, this change basically comes down to lawsuits and switch compatibility. So long story short, Glock has been going through it for a while now, fighting lawsuits from several states who are basically holding Glock responsible for the illegal actions of their citizens, and they're demanding that Glock redesign their pistols so they're not so easy to convert. The new pistol, from what I hear, will be called the Glock V, and I'm not exactly sure what all they're changing. Again, this is preliminary. I imagine they will definitely be changing the backplate design because that's where the drop-in switches go. I thought they already kind of changed that with the Gen 5s, but apparently it wasn't sufficient. And I imagine they'll also be changing the trigger mechanism as well. Now, my initial opinion on this when I first heard about it was, as long as it doesn't affect that Glock reliability that I love so much, I guess I really don't care. I follow the law. I don't use switches anyway. But then I heard that the Glock V series will not have MOS options. And that does kind of suck because I like Glock MOS. That's how I got the RMR HD on this Glock 19. And I assume they're just going to release iron sights only, at least at first. No optic cuts or nothing like that. And then hopefully soon after November 30th, we'll start getting MOS versions of the Glock V as well. I will say one thing I don't like about it is I just reject the entire premise for the argument altogether from the states and the judge's perspective. Blaming a company because people are illegally modifying their products seems backwards to me. It's literally no different than if someone were to sue Chevrolet for claiming that their vehicle is too easy to drive drunk or too easy to run over people with. Like, that's not what it's designed for. They didn't design it that way. That is the user's fault and no one else's, and we would all agree to that. No one would argue. And if I came out and said Chevy's being sued because people are driving their cars wrong, everyone would throw a fit. But for some reason with guns, there's like a two-tier justice system, and they just get treated differently altogether. The entire Second Amendment does, honestly, when it comes to courts and judges and governors. It's just a second-class right at this point. But that's my main issue. It does feel like bending the knee a little bit, and I'll also add there's already tens of millions of these Gen 3, 4, and 5 Glock pistols out there. So those aren't going anywhere, and I have a hard time believing they're not gonna find a way to switch up the other ones as well. Criminals get very creative, and where there's a will, there's a way. What's ironic about all this is Glock has kind of become known as the company that doesn't give a flying flip what their customers want. They're a very big company with a very big ego. No one loves Glocks more than Glock, and they really couldn't care less what their customers ask for. At least that's how it seems. They never change anything. They never upgrade anything. They did remove the finger grooves from the Gen 5 pistols, which I kind of like. I don't mind the finger grooves, but a lot of people were asking for that. It went back to like the Gen 2 grip style, which I like. That's really the only change I can remember Glock making in the last 20 years. They just don't change their pistols much. We're still getting plastic, factory sights, for God's sake. So it sucks. I wish they weren't making these changes, and I think they've kind of tried to fight this for as long as they can, and the judges weren't going for it. They said, nope, that ain't sufficient. We need a full redesign. And that is apparently what the Glock V is going to be. So for a lot of people, there's going to be no pity for Glock. I don't pity them either. They're a massive company with unlimited resources. There's probably several different ways they could have handled this. But I'm not a Glock hater either. And a lot of people are. I know why. But if we're being honest, you have to admit they make one of the most reliable handguns on the planet. And that's just a fact. So hopefully the new Glock V series doesn't affect reliability, because that would be a tragedy. So if you're not familiar with the Glock switch, I'm sure most of you are. There's a million videos on them, people using them and showing them off. They've become extremely popular over the last few years. And from what I understand, that is the main thing driving Glock to make this change. Basically, they just replace the backplate on any semi-automatic Glock pistol, and it converts it from semi-auto to fully auto. I actually got to shoot one a couple years ago in Texas, and it was fully legal, controlled environment, all professionals. With the right licensing, you can convert them. And let me tell you, that was one of the funnest machine guns I've ever fired in my life. And I've shot quite a few, but that Glock 17 with the switch, it wasn't an 18, it was a 17 with a button on the back. It was unique. Just something about holding a 9mm pistol in two hands and letting it go like that is fun. That's really all I can say. And I felt like I controlled it pretty well, honestly. Not to toot my own horn, but every round I shot hit the target. It was resetting, right to my point of aim after every round. And I shoot guns every day, but it still felt like a handful. Those things could get very sketchy very fast. So I can't even imagine what like a 16-year-old kid, that doesn't shoot handguns very often is doing with the switch. There's probably astronomical amounts of rounds just flying off and hitting houses 2 blocks away and innocent people and everything else. So I understand it. That being said, I think they should be legal. I just don't believe in gun control at all. And I think that, look where we're at. Switches are everywhere, and they're highly illegal right now. So I don't think gun control solves anything. Grown, responsible adults should be able to have whatever they want, and I think that would deter crime better than anything. But some of you might disagree with that. I understand. Feel free to argue in the comments. But that's just my opinion, and I think the evidence does back that up. So it just feels like every time we lose something, we never get it back. So I've kind of become no compromise on all this stuff, and I understand why people are upset about it, because it feels like a win for the other side. And we're constantly taking losses in this category. So like I said earlier, as far as I know, it is not going to change the way the pistol functions or affect reliability. I certainly hope not. They're just discontinuing the Gen 4 and Gen 5 models, and then they'll bring out the Glock V November 30th, I believe. So as long as it functions the way it always has, then it's not going to change much for me. That's basically all I got. I just wanted to get on here and kind of let my audience know what's going on. It felt like a big enough news story to make a video about. And once I started getting phone calls and text messages and stuff like that, I realized how many people are kind of upset by this. Maybe in a couple years, these OG Glocks will be collector's items and we'll all be sitting on really valuable handguns. Probably not, because there's like 50 million of them out there, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Rest in peace to the easily convertible Glocks and all the switchies out there. And before we go, I also want to apologize for the long break that we had last week. I've been filming videos like crazy and then not editing at all. It's starting to get cold, so I'm trying to film a bunch and bank as many as I can. So over the next couple weeks, we'll probably have a lot of videos, like one right after the other. Definitely keep an eye out for those. Interesting stuff, fun videos coming out. And I appreciate you all. I love you all. Thanks for the support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.